Welcome back, and thank you so much for sending those pictures. And if you haven't yet sent us yours about the weather conditions where you're at, please do so at Morning Live SABC and using that hashtag Morning Live as well. But back to some serious business now. Rights group Freedom Under Law is preparing an application seeking contempt of court charges against National Director of Public Prosecutions Shaun and his suspended deputy Nomgcobo Jiba. Now, the group found confirmation from the state attorney that Jiba had visited the offices of the National Prosecuting Authority on several occasions. Having been struck off the roll of advocates, the North Gauteng Court ordered that pending Jiba's appeal, she be prohibited from entering NPA offices. And to discuss these developments, we joined here by the Chief Executive Officer at Freedom Under Law, Nicole Fritz. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So just by means of background, how did we get here?
Sure, and we, unfortunately we have a fairly long backstory. When Ms. Jiba was, she was the acting director of the National Prosecuting Authority for some time. Several courts in the course of their judgments, made fairly damning findings against Ms. Jiba, finding that she had misled the courts, that her behaviour, her conduct had been unbecoming of a key figure within the National Prosecuting Authority. When Nomgcobo was the head of the National Prosecuting Authority, he sought to have the President institute a disciplinary inquiry and suspend her for that conduct. He was rebuffed. He then, as head of the NPA instituted charges. We'll recall that Mr. Nomgcobo was then essentially forced from office. Shaun Abrahams replaced him. One of Shaun Abrahams' first actions as the new head of the NPA was to withdraw those charges against Ms. Jiba. Freedom Under Law brought an application seeking a review of the withdrawal of those charges, also seeking a review of the decision on the part of the President not to institute a disciplinary inquiry and to suspend her. We got those orders from the North Gauteng Court. We prevailed in December of last year. The North Gauteng Court then also said, pending the finalisation of the appeals in relation to the General Counsel of the Bar matter, which was a parallel process that had sought to have her struck from the role of advocates, she be prohibited from visiting the NPA's offices. And we have now had confirmation that she has in fact visited the offices on at least 3 occasions over the last 6 months.
So the NPA, they've come out rejecting this, saying that they are in fact not in contempt of court and that pending her appeal process, of course, she has every right to still come to their premises. Right.
So they've said she has visited. She visited at the request of and with the authorization of Mr. Shaun Abrahams. They say, the Superior Court Act, they point to provisions there and say, essentially, if an appeal is registered, the final order is suspended. So it is, in effect, not operational at this point in time. We would say that is a very clear misunderstanding of the law and what applies. In fact, the court was very unambiguous and clear in this particular case. It said, pending the finalisation of the appeals process, it's an interlocutory ruling. It doesn't have final effect. And those types of rulings are not suspended. They are intended to guard in the interim period. They have immediate enforcement and application. And we're saying it is very clear that that particular provision relating to that particular part of the order relating to her prohibition is immediately enforceable and applicable. They have to know that as key officials of the National Prosecuting Authority. If they don't, they're not suited for the office. Otherwise, the other conclusion is that they've acted in flagrant breach of a court order, and that is even more worrying.
So just for the benefit of some of us layfolk, what sort of prejudice would be suffered as a result of Nomgcobo Jiba actually going to the NPA premises?
So the fact is, when the court deals with this issue in its judgment. It talks about, and we know this, so we have the President, at his SONA address talking about the importance of restoring stability to the National Prosecuting Authority, about there be integrity and stability of this institution. It is absolutely vital that the public be able to enjoy confidence in this institution, which is so key to our criminal justice system and our law enforcement. The fact is, if you have these individuals, in respect of whom there have been findings, court findings that are not being appealed, that they have misled the court, that they have acted inappropriately, that those persons continue to be seen to perform functions at the National Prosecuting Authority, that they have access, that they might be discussing cases. And in fact, in the letter from the state attorneys, there was an explanation given that one of the reasons for her visits was, in fact, to discuss a case of which she had historical knowledge. That impairs the public's confidence about the leadership of the National Prosecuting Authority, the types of people who are leading, who are involved in this. And that is obviously a concern to all of us in this constitutional democracy.
NPA spokesperson Mr. Mfaku yesterday on various media platforms speaking about this was saying that as freedom under law, you seem to have it in for Shaun Abrahams. What's your response to that?
So we don't have it in for Shaun or Abrahams personally. I mean, we have no sort of personal knowledge of Mr. Abrahams. But the fact is, we do believe that Mr. Abrahams has taken, particular conduct, has performed particular conduct that is absolutely unsuitable for office. That he is not fit to lead this institution. I think that is a fairly widely held view, that as long as he continues to lead the National Prosecuting Authority, integrity will not be restored. Stability will not be restored. It will not enjoy the full confidence of the public, and so it's no secret. We're waiting for a Constitutional Court judgment that might see the removal of Mr. Abrahams from office. We have another application where we seek to have a disciplinary inquiry instituted and him suspended, and that relates to the charging of Praveen Gordhan, Opa Magashula, and Ivan Pillay. Charges that ultimately had to be withdrawn in the most controversial circumstances, and that should never have been pursued. And so we do believe that there have been various actions on the part of Mr. Abrahams that very clearly show him to be unfit for the highest office, leading the National Prosecuting Authority.
So just finally, in the immediate term, where to next for you?
So we're actually waiting for a response from the State Attorney today. We've asked for a reassurance from the National Prosecuting Authority that Ms. Jiba will not be visiting the National Prosecuting Authority's offices anytime in future. If we don't get that reassurance, obviously there's a real apprehension of ongoing harm, and then we will approach the court on an urgent basis. So we'll make application within the next few days.
Well, thank you so much for coming through this morning. That was Nicole Fritz, Executive Officer at Freedom Under Law, and they are preparing an application seeking contempt of court charges against National Director of Public Prosecution Shaun Abrahams and his suspended Deputy Nomgcobo Jiba.